In the movie, Mad Money, three women in Kansas get into big trouble when the police catch them trying to get rid of stolen money. Nina Brewster, Jackie Truman, and Bridget Cardigan are trying hard to fix their money problems. As they try to hide their actions and avoid getting caught, things start to go wrong. Will they find a way to stay free and fix their lives? One night in Kansas, three women and their families were busy destroying a large amount of money when the police came to arrest them at their homes. There was single mother Nina Brewster with her sons, Jackie Truman and her husband Bob Truman, and Bridget Cardigan with her husband Don Cardigan. As Don shredded bills in the toilet, Bridget packed some money into a bag and escaped through the backyard. She used some meat from the fridge to distract the neighbor's dog and made it to her car safely. This situation began 3 years earlier when Bridget went to a party at her neighbor's house, Mindy and Bryce Arbogast. Bridget had not seen them in a while because she had stopped going out since Don lost his job a year before. At the party, Bridget found out that Don was selling their house, which led to a big argument between them. Don explained that they were overwhelmed with debt and that his age made it hard for him to find a new job. Bridget became even angrier because he had not told her earlier to cut their expenses. Frustrated with Don's inaction, Bridget decided to find a job herself. However, finding work proved to be very difficult. Having been a housewife for most of her life, with a degree in comparative literature and limited computer skills, she struggled. After failing at the job office and through newspaper ads, Bridget was approached by her house cleaner, who complained about her bounced paycheck. Since Bridget had no money to pay her, she gave her the number of a place that could help her find a job. Bridget ended up working as a janitor at the Federal Reserve Bank. During her tour of the bank, she met her new boss, Glover, who told her that everyone was monitored all the time, and Nina, who operated the dollar bill shredder. Bridget was impressed by the access she had to rooms full of money and how many old and worn-out bills were discarded each day. After her shift, Bridget went home and was too tired to discuss her day with Don. When the kitchen tap broke and Bridget had no choice but to visit the home center, she noticed all the products on display, especially the padlocks. This gave her the idea to steal money from the Reserve Bank. The next day, Bridget paid close attention to the locations of all the cameras and the routes the cash carts took. She discovered that only 3 keys could open the vault. One was in the sorting room, another was held by an agent in the inspection room, and the last one was in the shredding room. Bridget also tested the honesty of various employees to see if they would keep a bill they found on the floor. So far, everyone had been too honest and not trustworthy. However, she noticed Jackie's route with her cart and how Jackie seemed distracted by her music. Bridget saw this as an opportunity. At the end of the day, security guards Barry Cobb and Sean checked everyone's bags. Sean kept flirting with Nina, but she turned him down again and left the building. Bridget then approached Nina with her wild idea. Nina first thought Bridget was a spy sent by the higher-ups, but when she realized Bridget was serious about robbing the bank, she turned down the offer and went home to her children. Bridget didn't give up. She followed Nina, first calling her and then showing up at her door, trying to persuade her to join the heist. Nina rejected her every time, but started to reconsider the next day when she found all the flyers Bridget had left in her locker. The flyers showed the great schools Nina could send her kids to if she had the money. During lunch, Nina met Bridget in the bathroom and finally agreed to join the plan. However, she warned Bridget that if anything went wrong, she wouldn't be able to lose her children. They still needed one more person from the cash carts area, so they approached Jackie in the parking lot. When Jackie accidentally dropped her purse, they noticed a syringe among her belongings. They invited Jackie to have a drink with them at a bar, managed by Bridget's friend Junior. Junior scolded them for talking too loudly about illegal plans. Jackie immediately agreed to join the team without thinking about it. When Nina and Bridget expressed concern about her addiction and asked her to quit, Jackie was so touched by their concern that she chose not to mention that the syringe was for her diabetes injections. They also decided on a secret signal they would use when it was time to act, a touch of their eyebrows. The next day, Bridget hid the new padlock behind her belt. When she went through the metal detector at work, the guards thought the buckle was what set off the alarm. During lunch, Bridget made the special gesture and Nina responded, but Jackie just shook her head. The three of them rushed to the bathroom to talk about what happened. Jackie admitted she had a bad feeling. Bridget and Nina thought Jackie's concerns were silly and wanted her out of the team. However, they had to change their minds when Glover decided to conduct a random security search later that day. The next day, things went better for them. The three of them used their signal and silently agreed to start the plan, with Bridget going first in the inspection room. She pretended to clean the cash boxes and found one that was open for inspection. She positioned herself between the box and the camera to hide the fact that she was replacing the bank's lock with the new one she had bought. Then, Bridget went down the hallway and found Jackie. She told Jackie the number of the chosen box and wrote it on a piece of paper. She left the note with the real padlock in the bathroom's trash can for Nina to find. Next, it was Jackie's turn. She had to move cash carts around the building. She took the cart Bridget had chosen and, while waiting for the elevator, positioned herself between the cart and the camera. Jackie opened the padlock, took out some money, and hid it in the trash can behind her while pretending to dance. Afterward, Jackie took the cart to the shredding room. Nina put the real padlock back on, while Bridget did her usual rounds with the trash can and retrieved the money, hiding it among her cleaning supplies. Later, the three women met in the bathroom to divide the money, hiding it under their clothes. At the end of the day, Bridget and Nina passed through security without problems. They were worried about Jackie, who had some bills sticking out of her pants. Nina started delaying the line by flirting with Barry, but things became tense when Glover showed up looking angry. Fortunately, he only wanted to scold Bridget for dropping her entrance card. Glover's presence made Jackie check herself again and finally hide the bills properly in her pants. The three women went to Bridget's house to count the money and divide it equally, ending up throwing it at each other in celebration. Don found them and was not happy to learn his wife had become a criminal. He asked Bridget to stop, but she refused. She insisted they would keep doing their plan until they paid off all their bills. While Nina went to a fancy school to enroll her kids, Bridget and Don went to their bank to deposit some money, always keeping it under $9,000 to avoid IRS reporting. Don was still frustrated by the crime, but he was impressed by Bridget's cleverness. They ended up kissing in the car. Months went by and the three women continued to rob the bank. Glover never caught them, no matter how closely he watched the employees. They passed every security check without any problems. Bridget managed to get her house back, and Nina could keep her kids in the fancy school with all the supplies they needed. 6 months later, the three women, along with Don and Bob, had dinner together at a very nice restaurant. They celebrated having paid off all their bills and getting everything they needed. However, Bridget wanted to keep going. Jackie and Bob agreed, but Don and Nina did not. Bridget gave them a speech about how they had always been treated poorly by their bosses. She reminded them how Don had been fired after many years of service, how Nina needed money for her kids' university, and how Jackie wanted to travel the world. Most importantly, she stressed the need for financial security. Nina eventually agreed to continue, but only if they didn't make any big purchases to avoid drawing attention. Once they had enough money, they could move to a place where people wouldn't know how much money they had. Bridget didn't like the idea but had no choice but to accept because she couldn't keep stealing without Nina's help. However, Bridget quickly broke her promise and bought an incredibly expensive ring for herself. Nina saw through Bridget's deception. She cornered Bridget in the bathroom at work, took off her glove, and found the ring on her finger. As punishment for breaking her promise, Nina took the ring and flushed it down the toilet, reminding Bridget of the rules. A few days later, in the same bathroom, Nina was pacing the floor while playing with the lock key, worried about her friend being late. When Bridget finally arrived, she threw the lock bag to Nina in a hurry. As Nina caught it, she accidentally dropped the key into the sink drain. Bridget couldn't go back to the first floor to ask Jackie for the spare key, because changing her daily route would be suspicious. She also didn't have Jackie's phone number, so Bridget stayed in the bathroom and called her husband while Nina returned to her workstation before anyone noticed she was gone. Don went to visit Bob at his workplace to ask him to call Jackie and warn her about the problem. Bob's boss noticed him using his phone instead of working. When Bob refused to go back to his job, he got fired. It took Don a long time to return to Bridget and tell her that Jackie would find a way to pass the key. Glover became suspicious of Jackie spending so much time in the bathroom and went to confront her. Bridget managed to get out of trouble by pretending to be extremely upset about the mess in the bathroom made by the bank employees. She even yelled so hysterically that she scared Glover away. At the elevator doors, Jackie hid the key in her chewed bubble gum, planning to stick it to the walls secretly. When the elevator opened, 2 men were inside, so Jackie pretended to be offended by them and threw the gum at their heads in anger. The men avoided the gum, which stuck to the elevator wall with the key inside. The elevator then took the gum to Bridget's floor where she retrieved it. Meanwhile, Nina couldn't open the cart padlock because she didn't have the right key. Barry tried to help her, as sometimes the lock gets stuck, but he was surprised when he couldn't open it either. Luckily, Bridget arrived just in time. She asked Barry to open the door, and while he was distracted, Bridget threw the key to Nina, who was finally able to open the lock. Nina smiled at Barry, letting him know she had solved the problem. But Barry noticed that the real key was still hanging in its usual spot, as if it hadn't been taken. Bridget called Don, who was with Bob, to let him know everything was fine. Don apologized to Bob for causing him to lose his job, but Bob didn't mind because he hated it anyway. Don found Bob's reaction interesting because he started to think he missed his own job. After work, Barry waited for Nina in the parking lot and told her he knew what was going on. He asked Nina to inform her team that it was over before he left. The three women met at Junior's place to discuss their problem, where Junior treated them to some shots. They thought they could use Barry's interest in Nina to their advantage, but Nina didn't want to use that approach for money. Instead, she suggested adding Barry to their team. The other two insisted on trying the date idea, so Nina promised she would decide what to do when the time came. Nina dressed up nicely and went to Barry's apartment, unaware that he lived with his sick mother. She told Barry that the money could give him anything he wanted and offered to go on a date with him sometime. However, Barry turned her down. The next day, Bridget confronted Barry in the bathroom to understand his decision, because she couldn't believe a man would refuse both money and a beautiful woman. Shortly after, Bridget returned to her friends and told them that Barry agreed to join the team, but didn't want the date to be part of the deal, as he believed Nina deserved more. Later that evening, they divided the money with Barry at Bridget's house. With Barry now part of the team, he would help them by warning them of any surprise inspections. Before leaving, Nina apologized to Barry for trying to use him for money. They both admitted they were interested in each other, and their relationship became more genuine. They ended up kissing in Bridget's closet. Meanwhile, Bridget grew frustrated with not being able to spend the money. Don, missing his administrative job and wanting to keep Bridget, joined the team to help them lie about their work and make it appear as if they were earning more than they actually were. Nina would pretend to have a boyfriend who was often out of town and sent her gifts. Bob would claim he was day trading online. Barry would say his mother received a large insurance settlement, and Don would say he was doing freelance consulting. From then on, they continued to steal money and started spending it as well. Jackie and Bob bought a bike, an electric guitar, and a bigger motorhome. Nina moved from her small house to a large one in the suburbs, and Bridget and Don renovated their house and bought lots of clothes and shoes. The only problem they faced was finding a place to hide all the money. 3 years after their first heist, Bridget hosted a party at her house and noticed a guest she didn't recognize. However, she quickly forgot about him when her husband announced he had found a new job and Nina showed off her engagement ring. The next day, Glover was giving a tour of the bank to that same unfamiliar guest. He used the cash cart Jackie was supposed to deliver as an example of the money route. Jackie met with the team in the bathroom and warned them about the change in routine, expressing her concern. They decided to stay calm and gather more information before taking any action. However, Bridget felt uneasy when she continued her work and realized the man from her party was the same one on the tour. The man was Federal Bank Examiner Mandelbrot. In a private office, he questioned Glover about possible theft by some employees. Glover was very proud of the bank's security and refused to believe that anyone could have stolen anything. He told Mandelbrot to leave until he could provide real evidence. As Mandelbrot questioned the neighbors in Bridget's town, Don learned about Mandelbrot's role and pleaded with Bridget to call a lawyer and confess. Bridget refused, fearing it would lead to Nina's children being taken away by the authorities. With all three homes now under surveillance, the couples met to discuss their next steps. Bridget believed they hadn't been arrested yet because there was no solid proof, so they should continue as usual and be cautious with their spending. Bob admitted he might not have been careful enough. He had taken his cover story of day trading seriously and actually started doing it. Since he invested more than $10,000, this transaction was reported to the IRS, which explained the investigation. Bridget insisted that the police had no real proof, but Nina pointed out that the money hidden in their homes was evidence. They all agreed to destroy the money when they got home, despite Bridget's objections. Before leaving, Barry warned Nina that if they got caught, they only needed one person to speak out, and it could lead to everyone being implicated. He advised her to make a deal quickly to protect her kids, assuring her that nobody would blame her for doing so. Now, the story comes full circle. Jackie and Bob blew up their old motorhome with the money inside and tried to flee in the new one. However, they were caught before they could even leave the area. Nina was caught setting the money on fire, Barry was found putting it in his car, and Dawn was caught shredding the money in the toilet. Meanwhile, Bridget managed to escape in her car, not knowing Mandelbrot was following her. She spent the night in a hotel under a fake name, having bribed the receptionist to avoid showing a credit card. The next morning, while eating breakfast at the hotel's restaurant, Mandelbrot approached her. He asked her some questions, but Bridget reminded him he couldn't arrest her since he wasn't a cop, and then left. Meanwhile, the rest of the team was being questioned by the police. Bob refused to speak without a lawyer. Don pretended not to care about his wife leaving him, and Nina was offered a deal to protect her kids. After thinking for a few hours, Nina decided to accept the deal, but the officer told her it was too late. Jackie had already made a deal, and she didn't ask for her own freedom. Instead, she asked for Nina to be released so she could return to her family. Bridget visited her neighbors and asked Bryce to be her lawyer. Although he usually didn't do legal work, he changed his mind when he saw the amount of money Bridget had. Bryce went to the police station and introduced himself as the lawyer for all the team members. Just as Bridget had predicted, the police didn't have proof that the money was stolen, even when they brought in Glover for questioning. Glover was confident that no one could have robbed his bank without raising suspicion. The police had no case, but the IRS did. If the money was legal, they should have paid taxes on it. In the end, they struck a deal. They could walk free without fines or penalties as long as they returned all the money, which they agreed to. After leaving the station, they all hugged and went their separate ways. 8 months later, the women met at Junior's again to update each other on their lives. Nina's honeymoon lasted only 2 days, and her family was now living in a tiny apartment. But with 2 incomes, they were doing well. Jackie was waitressing, and Bob had gotten his old job back. They were saving money to visit South America in 5 years. Bridget had surprising news. She talked about the saying "mad money," which suggests that women always keep some money hidden for emergencies. She then revealed that she had been hiding money in Junior's deposit all along. They could now use this money to finally live the life they had always wanted.